This video finds you at the right time, because if it found you 5 years later, you would defend the cage instead of escaping it. That's what conditioning does. It turns prisoners into protectors of their own limits. Stay with me, and you'll start noticing the invisible rules controlling your ambition, your fear, even your definition of intelligence. And once you see the operating system, you can rewrite it. Your school system was designed in the 1800s, but not by educators, by the Prussian military. They had a problem. How do you create soldiers who follow orders without question? How do you build a population that's educated enough to work in factories, but not educated enough to revolt against the system? They engineered a solution: compulsory education, not education for liberation, education for control. And the model spread like a virus. Britain adopted it. America perfected it. Now the whole world runs on it. Here's the structure they created: the bells. They don't exist for your convenience. They exist to condition you. Just like Pavlov's dogs, you've been trained to move when you hear a sound. Not when you're ready, not when it makes sense. When you're told, the rouse. You sit in lines, facing forward, eyes on the authority figure. This isn't optimal for learning. Group discussions, hands-on projects, individualized instruction, those work better. But rouse mimic factory assembly lines and military formations. It's about training you to know your place. Standardized testing. Everyone takes the same test. Everyone's measured by the same metric. Doesn't matter if you're a visual learner or a kinesthetic learner. Doesn't matter if you grasp concepts differently. You will be measured by your ability to memorize temporarily and regurgitate on demand. Age-based grouping. You're not grouped by ability or interest or learning style. You're grouped by age. Why? Because it creates artificial competition. You learn to compare yourself to peers instead of to your potential. Punishment for deviation, reward for compliance. Step out of line and face consequences. Stay in line and get gold stars. Notice something? That's not how you train thinkers. That's how you train workers. Light Yagami didn't become Kira by sitting quietly and raising his hand. Ayanokaji wasn't shaped by taking multiple choice tests. Johann Liebert didn't develop his psychological mastery by memorizing facts for exams he'd forget in 2 weeks. These characters, fictional, yes, but they represent something real. Intelligence that operates outside institutional frameworks. But here's what's darker. The system still works this way, even though we don't need factory workers anymore, even though the Industrial Revolution ended over a century ago, even though the world has changed completely. The structure remains identical. Why? Because obedient populations are easier to control than critical thinkers. A population trained to seek permission, to wait for instructions, to doubt their own judgment, to believe that authority figures know better. That's a population that won't challenge power structures. And you've been in this system since you were 5 years old. 12 years minimum, sometimes 16, sometimes 20. That's a long time to be conditioned. Let me show you the exact lies that keep you walking into the cage every single day. Lie 1. Education equals intelligence. Your GPA doesn't measure how smart you are. Your test scores don't measure your potential. Your class rank doesn't measure your ability to succeed in the real world. They measure one thing: how well you absorb and regurgitate pre-approved information. There's a reason why some of the most successful people barely graduated while some valedictorians end up working for them. Real intelligence is pattern recognition, problem solving under uncertainty, creative synthesis of disparate concepts, strategic thinking across time horizons. Your report card measures compliance. Can you sit still for 8 hours? Can you memorize information you don't care about? Can you perform on demand? Can you meet arbitrary deadlines for arbitrary assignments that simulate nothing in the real world? That's not intelligence, that's training. And here's the kicker. The things that actually indicate intelligence: asking uncomfortable questions, challenging assumptions, thinking divergently, pursuing knowledge outside the curriculum, those things often hurt your grades. The system punishes the behaviors it claims to value. A lie 2. Follow the path and you'll be successful. The meritocracy myth. The biggest lie ever sold. Work hard, get good grades, go to a good college, get a good job, climb the ladder, retire happy. They sold you a linear path. Clear, safe, guaranteed. Except it's crowded as f***. Millions of people, all walking the same direction, all competing for the same limited spots, all believing that if they just work harder than the next person, they'll make it. But here's the mathematical reality. The game was rigged before you sat down to play. The good colleges accept 3 to 7% of applicants. The good jobs get 300, 500 applications for one position. The good careers require unpaid internships that only wealthy students can afford. The retirement age keeps getting pushed back because the economic model is collapsing. You're competing in a race where 95% of participants are guaranteed to lose. And the winners? Look closely. Family connections, generational wealth, access to opportunities you'll never have. But they'll tell you that you just didn't work hard enough, that you didn't want it enough, that you made bad choices. The system blames you for its design flaws. Lie 3. We're preparing you for the real world. No, you're being prepared for a world that doesn't exist anymore. The jobs they're training you for are being automated. The skills they're teaching you can be Googled in 3 seconds. The entire model is based on an economy that died 20 years ago. Meanwhile, the actual skills you need, adaptability, creative problem-solving, entrepreneurial thinking, digital literacy, self-directed learning, are either ignored or actively suppressed. Why? Because those skills make you independent. And independent people don't need the system. Lie 4. Question everything except the structure itself. They'll let you debate topics within the framework. Democrats versus Republicans, capitalism versus socialism, whether Shakespeare is still relevant, safe debates, contained debates, debates that don't threaten the structure. But try questioning the structure itself. Why do we measure everyone the same way when we know people learn differently? Why is curiosity punished when it disrupts the schedule? Why are we learning information we could Google instead of learning how to think? Why does the system produce so much anxiety and depression if it's working correctly? Watch how fast you're labeled a problem. The students who ask why too often, the ones who challenge the curriculum, the ones who learn differently, the ones who want to go deeper instead of moving on to the next unit. They're labeled problems, medicated, sidelined, told they're not applying themselves or they have attitude issues. Translation: they're not conforming correctly. The system tolerates questioning within limits. But question the limits themselves, and you're a threat. Lie 5. Everyone can succeed if they try hard enough. This is perhaps the cruelest lie because it makes failure personal. If the system says everyone can succeed, then failure must be your fault. You didn't work hard enough. You didn't want it enough. You made poor choices. But mathematically, in a competitive system, everyone cannot succeed. For every winner, there must be losers. The system requires failure to function. College acceptance rates dropping, job markets oversaturated, housing unaffordable, healthcare inaccessible. These aren't personal failures. These are systemic design features. But by framing it as individual merit, they ensure you blame yourself instead of questioning why the game is structured this way. But here's where it gets truly sinister, and this is what most people miss. You want to stay in the trap. I know that sounds harsh, but think about it. Really think about it. Following the conventional path feels safe. It feels validated. Your parents approve. Finally, you're doing something right. Society approves. You're being responsible. Your peers approve. You're all suffering together. You have a clear roadmap. You can measure your progress. You know what success looks like because everyone else is chasing the same definition. The alternative? Uncertainty. No roadmap. No guaranteed outcome. Judgment from everyone around you. The possibility that you might fail without the safety net of, I did what I was supposed to do. So you stay. You get the degree you're not passionate about because it's practical. You take the internship that pays nothing because it's a good opportunity. You accept the job that slowly kills your soul because it has benefits and security. You climb a ladder that's leaning against the wrong building. And here's the worst part. You become the trap for the next generation. This is how systems perpetuate themselves, not through force, not through propaganda, through fear and social pressure. Your parents tell you to follow the path because they followed it, and admitting the truth, that they spent decades playing a rigged game, that their struggles weren't necessary, that there might have been better options. That's too painful. So they double down. They insist you follow their footsteps. They call your doubts immaturity, and your alternative ideas unrealistic. The cycle continues. But let me ask you something. If everyone's following the same path, who's creating the new ones? The answer? The people who had the courage to step off the conveyor belt. The people who were willing to endure judgment, uncertainty, and short-term discomfort for long-term freedom. And here's what they discovered. The path they warned you about, the risky path, the irresponsible path, was often less risky than the conventional one. Because when you develop real skills, build genuine value, and think strategically, you become anti-fragile. You're not dependent on a single employer, a single degree, a single pathway to success. You have options, mobility, agency. Meanwhile, the safe path leaves you dependent. One layoff away from crisis, one industry disruption away from obsolescence, one economic shift away from collapse. But the system doesn't want you to see this. You know what you'll never learn in traditional school? How to actually think. Not what to think, how to think. Let me give you the curriculum they're hiding from you. The real education that produces actual results. Module 1, Meta-Learning. Learning how to learn. School teaches you to cram information into short-term memory, regurgitate it on a test, then forget it completely. That's not learning. That's performance theater. Real learning is about building mental models that help you understand new information faster, connecting concepts across disciplines, understanding principles instead of memorizing facts, developing pattern recognition, creating systems that compound over time. Ayano Koji doesn't know everything. He knows how to figure out anything. He can enter a new domain and rapidly acquire competence because he understands how learning works. That's the difference between knowledge and intelligence. Module 2, Strategic Thinking. Second and third order consequences. How to think several moves ahead. How to see what happens after what happens. Light Yagami wasn't smarter than L because he knew more facts. He was strategic. He understood game theory. He could predict how people would respond to his actions and plan accordingly. Your school teaches you to answer questions. It doesn't teach you to ask the right ones. It doesn't teach you to think, if I do X, then Y will happen, which will cause Z, which will create opportunity for A. It doesn't teach you to model systems, predict outcomes, or think probabilistically. But this is how power actually works in the real world. Module 3, System Recognition. Seeing the invisible architecture. How to identify power structures, incentive systems, and hidden agendas. Every system has visible rules and invisible rules. The visible rules are what they tell you. The invisible rules are how things actually work. Why does your school prioritize certain subjects over others? Why do they measure success this specific way? Who benefits from this structure? What behaviors are being encouraged and why? Johann Liebert understood systems. He could see the invisible architecture of institutions, understand the incentive structures, and exploit them. You're taught to operate within systems, never to question why the system exists or who it serves. Module 4, Influence and Persuasion. How communication actually works. How people actually make decisions. How to present ideas effectively. How to understand and utilize social dynamics. This is arguably the most valuable skill in the modern world. Your success will depend more on your ability to communicate, persuade, and influence than on any technical knowledge. Yet schools don't teach it. Why? Because if you understood persuasion deeply, you'd recognize when you're being manipulated. You'd see through marketing, through political rhetoric, through the very structure of the education system itself. Can't have that. Module 5, Economic Reality. How value actually works. How money actually works. How value is created and captured. How to build systems that generate wealth instead of trading time for money. They don't teach you this because financially independent people are harder to control. An employee who needs the paycheck will accept conditions a free agent never would. Someone dependent on a system will defend that system even when it's exploiting them. Financial literacy threatens the power structure. Module 6, Self-Directed Learning. Becoming ungovernable. How to build your own curriculum. How to identify skill gaps. How to develop expertise outside institutional frameworks. How to become a learning machine. This is the ultimate skill. Learning how to learn without needing someone to teach you. Autodidacts are dangerous to systems that profit from gatekeeping knowledge. If you can teach yourself anything, you don't need their credentials, their institutions, their permission. You become free. So what do you actually do with this information? Here's the framework that changes everything. Step 1, play the game without letting it play you. If you're in school, fine. Get the credentials. They're tools, not identities. But don't mistake the map for the territory. The diploma is a key that opens certain doors. It's not the destination. It's not your identity. It's not even that important. What matters is what you're building while you're getting it. Step 2, build your real education in parallel. While you're sitting in that classroom checking boxes, learn what they're not teaching you. Allocate your time strategically. 2 hours on assigned homework, do enough to maintain acceptable grades. 2, 3 hours on your real education. Read books they don't assign. Influence by Robert Cialdini. Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel. Study subjects they don't teach. Persuasion and Rhetoric. Behavioral Psychology. Game Theory, Economic Thinking. Strategic Analysis. Develop skills that compound. Writing, thinking clearly. Speaking, communicating effectively. Building, creating value. Selling, capturing value. In 5 years, guess which investment matters more? The grade on a test you'll never think about again, or the skills that actually create results? Step 3, develop high agency thinking. Stop waiting for permission. The system teaches you to raise your hand, to wait your turn, to seek approval before acting, to believe you need credentials before you're allowed to try. High agency people identify problems and solve them without waiting for someone to assign the task. They see opportunities and pursue them without asking if they're allowed. They create value first. Seek permission, never. This is how you become irreplaceable, by doing things others won't do without explicit instructions. Step 4, build proof of competence outside institutional validation. Create things. Build projects. Solve real problems. Document your journey. A portfolio of actual work is worth infinitely more than a 4.0 GPA. Why? Because employers don't actually care about your ability to take tests. They care about your ability to deliver results. Show, don't tell. One GitHub repository with quality code beats a computer science degree. One successful business beats an MBA. One viral piece of content beats a marketing degree. The credential opens the door. The portfolio gets you the job. The results keep you there. Step 5, master the ultimate meta skill. Learn how to learn. Everything else is downstream from this. If you can teach yourself anything rapidly, you're never dependent on institutions, teachers, credentials, or gatekeepers. Markets change, industries collapse, technologies evolve, jobs disappear. But someone who can rapidly acquire new skills, they adapt, they pivot, they survive, they thrive. You become anti-fragile. The choice you have to make. So here you are, at the exact crossroads I mentioned at the beginning. Path 1, keep following the script. Do what you're told. Chase the degree, the job, the title, the external validation. Compete with millions of others for scraps of success in a system designed to keep you in place. It's safe. It's familiar. It's what everyone expects. Your parents will approve. Society will approve. You'll have clear metrics for success. It's also slow suicide of your potential. You'll wake up at 45 realizing you spent 2 decades optimizing for someone else's definition of success. You'll have climbed the ladder only to discover it was leaning against the wrong wall. Path 2, wake up. Recognize the game. Play it strategically while building something they can't control. Develop real intelligence instead of certified obedience. It's uncertain. It's lonely sometimes. People will question you. They'll call you arrogant for thinking you know better than experts. They'll call you foolish for taking risks. They'll call you lucky when you succeed, but it's yours. Here's what most people don't understand. The education trap isn't about buildings or teachers or curricula. It's about your mind accepting limitations as facts. It's about you believing that their definition of success is the only one that matters. It's about you outsourcing your potential to people who profit from keeping you average. The cage isn't locked. It never was. You just have to be willing to walk through the open door. And yes, it's dark out there. Yes, there's no guaranteed path. Yes, you might fail, but at least you'll be alive. This video found you for a reason. Maybe you're 16, sitting in a classroom right now, feeling like something's fundamentally wrong, but you can't articulate what. Maybe you're 23, 3 years into a degree you hate, wondering if it's too late to change course. Maybe you're 30, realizing the promised payoff never came and never will. Here's the truth they don't want you to know. It's not too late, but it requires one thing: the courage to think for yourself. The system wants obedient workers, compliant consumers, predictable participants who stay in their lane, don't ask uncomfortable questions, and blame themselves when the system fails them. Be something else. Be dangerous. Be ungovernable. Be awake, not through pointless rebellion, not through dropping out and doing nothing, but through strategic intelligence, through seeing what others don't see, through building skills they can't commoditize, through creating value they can't control, through becoming someone they can't replace. The path is dark. It's uncertain. There's no guaranteed outcome, no safety net, no one to blame if it doesn't work. But at least it's real. At least it's yours. And that's more than most people ever get. You have a choice. Make it consciously. Because the alternative is spending your entire life on autopilot, following someone else's script, wondering why you never felt fully alive. The cage door is open. Walk through it. Education is what remains after one has forgotten what one has learned in school. Albert Einstein. The system taught you what to think. Now teach yourself how to think.